Welcome, seekers of hidden knowledge, to the mystical realm of the occult. Delve into the secrets of the universe as we journey together into the enigmatic world of ancient wisdom. Brought to you by your guide through the shadows of enlightenment, Wisdom Rocker. Uncover the mysteries, unlock the power, and journey with us as we explore the hidden depths within the pages of forgotten scrolls and ancient texts. Prepare to embark on a journey beyond the ordinary, where wisdom transcends time and knowledge is your greatest ally. Welcome to Wisdom Rocker. Prepare to awaken your inner sage. In this video, we will be uncovering the wisdom within the chapters of
The History of Magic, including a clear and precise exposition of its procedure, its rites and its mysteries. By Eliphas Levi, 1922.
Book 6, Magic and the Revolution, Vow.
Chapter 2. Thaumaturgic Personalities of the 18th Century. The 18th century was credulous about nothing but magic, and the explanation is that vague beliefs are the religion of souls devoid of true faith. The miracles of Jesus Christ were denied, while resurrections were ascribed to the Comte de Saint-Germain. This exceptional personality was a mysterious theosophist who was credited with possessing the secrets of the great work and the manufacture of diamonds and of precious stones. For the rest, he was a man of the world, agreeable in conversation and highly distinguished in manners. Madame de Genlis, who saw him almost daily during his early years, says that even his representations of gems in pictures had a natural fire and gleam, the secret of which could not be divined by any chemist or painter. None of his pictures are in evidence, and it can only be speculated whether he had contrived to fix light on canvas or whether he employed a preparation of mother of pearl or some metallic coating. The Comte de Saint-Germain professed the Catholic religion and conformed to its practices with great fidelity. This notwithstanding, there were reports of suspicious evocations and strange apparitions. He claimed also to have the secret of eternal youth. Was this mysticism, or was it madness? His family connections were unknown, and to hear him talk of past events suggested that he had lived for many centuries. But of all that was in kinship with occult science he said but little, and when the benefit of initiation was demanded at his hands he pretended to know nothing on the subject. He chose his own disciples, required passive obedience on their part, and then talked of a royalty to which they were called, being that of Melchizedek and Solomon, a royalty of initiation, which is a priesthood at the same time. "Be the torch of the world," he said. "If your light is that only of a planet, you will be as nothing in the sight of God. I reserve for you a splendor, of which the solar glory is a shadow. You shall guide the course of stars, and those who rule empires shall be governed by you." These promises, the proper meaning of which is quite intelligible to true adepts, are recorded substantially, if not in the words here given, by the anonymous author of A History of Secret Societies in Germany, and they are evidence as to the school of initiation with which the Comte de Saint-Germain was connected. The following details have been so far unknown concerning him. The Comte de Saint-Germain was born at Lentmeritz in Bohemia at the end of the 17th century. He was either the natural or an adopted son of a Rosicrucian who called himself Comes Cabbalicus, the companion Kabbalist ridiculed under the name of Comte de Gobelus by the unfortunate Abbé de Villers. Saint-Germain never spoke of his father, but he mentions that he led a life of prescription and errantry in a world of forest, having his mother as companion. This was at the age of 7 years, which, however, is to be understood symbolically and is that of the initiate when he is advanced to the grade of master. His mother was the science of the adepts, while the forest, in the same kind of language, signifies empires devoid of the true civilization and light. The principles of Saint-Germain were those of the Rosy Cross, and in his own country he established a society from which he separated subsequently when anarchic doctrines became prevalent in fellowships which incorporated new partisans of the Gnosis. Hence he was disowned by his brethren, was charged even with treason, and some memorials on Illuminism seem to hint that he was immured in the dungeons of the Castle of Rule. On the other hand, Madame de Genlis tells us that he died in the Duchy of Holstein, a prey to his own conscience and terrors of the life beyond. It is certain in any case that he vanished suddenly from Paris, no one exactly knowing where, and that his companions in illumination permitted the veil of silence and oblivion to fall as far as possible upon his memory. The association which he had formed under the title of Saint Joachim, which has been turned into Saint Joachim, continued till the Revolution, when it dissolved or was transformed, like so many others. A story is told concerning it in a pamphlet against Illuminism. It is derived from a correspondence in Vienna and, though it is worth reproducing, there is nothing that can be termed certain or authentic therein. Owing to your introduction, I had a cordial welcome from MNZ, who had been informed already of my arrival. Of the harmonica he approved highly. He spoke first of all about certain trials, but of this I understood nothing. It is of late only that I have been able to grasp the meaning. Yesterday, towards evening, I accompanied him to his country house, the grounds of which are very beautiful. Temples, grottos, cascades, labyrinths, caves form a long vista of enchantments, but an exceedingly high wall which encompasses the whole pleasance was extremely displeasing to me. For beyond this, there is also a wonderful prospect. I had brought the harmonica with me, at the instance of MNZ, with the idea of playing on it for a few minutes in a place indicated, and on receiving an agreed signal. The visit to the garden over, he took me to a room in the front of the house and there left me, somewhat quickly and under a trivial pretext. It was now very late, he did not return weariness, and the wish to sleep began to come over me, when I was interrupted by the arrival of several coaches. I opened the window, but, being night, I could see nothing, and I was much puzzled by the low and mysterious whispering of those who seemed entering the house. Sleep now overcame me, and an hour must have passed away, when I was awakened by a servant who was sent to conduct me and also carry the instrument. He walked very quickly and far in advance of myself, I following mechanically, when I heard the sound of horns, which seemed to issue from the depths of a cave. At this moment I lost sight of my guide, and proceeding in the direction from which the noise seemed to be coming, I half descended a staircase leading to a vault, from which, to my utter surprise, a funeral chant arose, and I saw distinctly a corpse in an open coffin. On one side stood a man clothed in white, covered with blood. It appeared to me that a vein had been opened in his right arm. With the exception of those who were helping him, all present were shrouded in long black mantles and were armed with drawn swords. So far as I could judge in my state of terror, the entrance to the vault was strewn with human bones, heaped one upon another. The only light which illuminated the mournful spectacle was that of a flame, such as is produced by spirits of wine. Uncertain whether I should be able to overtake my guide, I retreated hurriedly and found him in search of myself. A few paces away there was a haggard look in his eyes, and taking my hand in rather an uneasy manner, he led me into a singular garden, where I began to think that I must have been transported by magic. The brilliance produced by a vast number of lamps, the murmur of falling waters, the singing of mechanical nightingales, and the perfume which seemed to exhale everywhere exalted my imagination at the outset. I was hidden behind a green arbor, the interior of which was richly decorated, and thither they brought immediately a person in a fainting state, apparently the one who had occupied the coffin in the vault. It was at this point that I received the agreed signal to play my instrument. Disturbed very much by the whole scene, there is no doubt that a good deal escaped me, but I could see that the swooning person came to himself as soon as I touched the harmonica. He also began to ask questions with an accent of astonishment, saying, "Where am I? What is this?" Voice shouts of joy, accompanied by trumpets and timbrels, were the only answer. Everyone ran to arms and, plunging into the depths of the garden, were quickly out of sight. I am still in agitation as I write these lines, and if I had not taken the precaution to make my notes on the spot, I should regard it today as a dream. The most inexplicable part of this scene is the presence of the uninitiated person who tells the story. How the association could thus risk the betrayal of its mysteries is a question that cannot be answered, but the mysteries themselves can be explained easily. The successors of the old Rosicrucians, modifying little by little the austere and hierarchic methods of their precursors in initiation, had become a mystic sect and had embraced zealously the Templar magical doctrines, as a result of which they regarded themselves as the sole depositaries of the secrets intimated by the Gospel according to St. John. They regarded the narratives of that Gospel as an allegorical sequence of rites designed to complete initiation, and they believed that the history of Christ must be realized in the person of each one of the adepts. Furthermore, they recounted a Gnostic legend according to which the Savior, instead of being buried in the new tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, having been swathed and perfumed, was brought back to life in the house of St. John. This was the pretended mystery which they celebrated to the sound of horns and harmonica. The candidate was invited to offer up his life, and was actually subjected to bleeding which caused him to swoon. This swoon was called death, and when he returned to himself, his resurrection was celebrated amidst outbursts of joy and gladness. The varied emotions produced, the scenes by turns mournful and brilliant, must have permanently impressed the candidate's imagination and rendered him either fanatical or lucid. Many believed that a real resurrection took place in themselves and felt convinced that they were no longer subject to death. The heads of the society thus had at the service of their concealed projects the most formidable of all instruments, namely madness, and secured on the part of their adepts that blind and tireless devotion which unreason produces more often and more surely than goodwill. The sect of Saint Joachim was therefore an order of Gnostics steeped in the illusions of the magic of fascination it drew from Rosicrucians and Templars, and its particular name was one of the two Nene Shekin and Boaz engraven on the chief pillars of Solomon's temple. In Hebrew, the initial letter of Jashin is Yod, a sacred letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and also the initial of Jehovah, which divine name was indeed veiled from the profane under that of Jashin, whence the designation Saint Joachim. The members of this order were theosophists, unwisely addicted to theurgic processes. All that is told of the mysterious Comte de Saint-Germain supports the idea that he was a skillful physician and a distinguished chemist. He is said to have known how to fuse diamonds so that there was no trace of the operation. He could also purify precious stones, thus making the most common and imperfect of high value. That imbecile and anonymous author whom we have already cited places the latter claim to his credit, but denies that he ever made gold, as if one did not make gold in the making of precious stones. Saint Germain also invented, according to the same authority, and bequeathed to the industrial sciences, the art of imparting greater brilliance and ductility to copper, another invention sufficient to prove the fortune of him who devised it. Performances of this kind make us forgive the Comte de Saint-Germain for having been acquainted with Queen Cleopatra and for chatting familiarly with the Queen of Sheba. He was otherwise good-natured and gallant. He was one who loved children and amused himself by providing them with delicious sweetmeats and marvelous toys. He was dark and of small stature, dressed richly but with great taste, and cultivating all the refinements of luxury. He is said to have been received familiarly by Louis XV, and was engrossed with him over questions of diamonds and other precious stones. It is probable that this monarch, entirely governed by courtesans and given up to pleasure, was rather yielding to some caprice of feminine curiosity than to any serious concern for science when he invited Saint Germain to certain private audiences. The Comte was the fashion for a moment, and as he was an amiable and youthful Methuselah, who knew how to combine the tattle of a roux with the ecstasies of a theosophist, he was the rage in certain circles, though speedily replaced by other fantasiasts. So goes the world. It is said that Saint Germain was no other than that mysterious Althotas who was the master in magic of another adept with whom we are about to be occupied, and who took the Kabbalistic name of Acharat. The supposition has no foundation, as will be seen in due course. Whilst the Comte de Saint-Germain was thus in request at Paris, another mysterious adept was on his way through the world, recruiting apostles for the philosophy of Hermes. He was an alchemist who called himself Lascaris and gave out that he was an Eastern archimandrite, charged with collecting alms for a Greek convent. The distinction was this, that instead of demanding money, Lascaris seemed occupied, so to speak, in sowing his path with gold and leaving the trail of it behind him wherever he went. His appearances were momentary only, in his guises many here he was old, and in the next place still a young man. He did not make gold in public on his own part, but caused it to be made by his disciples, with whom he left at parting a little of the powder of projection. Nothing is better established than the transmutations operated by these emissaries of Lascaris. Monsieur Louis Figuier, in his learned work on the alchemists, does not question either their reality or their importance. Now, in physics above all, therein nothing more inexorable than facts, and it must be therefore concluded from these that the philosophical stone is not a matter of reverie. If the vast tradition of occultism, the ancient mythologies, and the serious researches of great men in all ages are not otherwise sufficient to establish its real existence. A modern chemist who has not failed to publish his secret has arrived at the extraction of gold from silver by a ruinous process, for the silver sacrificed by him does not produce in gold more than the tenth of its value, or thereabouts. Agrippa, who never attained the universal dissolvent, was notwithstanding more fortunate than our chemist, for he did obtain gold which was equivalent in value to the silver employed in his process, and did not therefore lose his labor absolutely, if to employ it in research after the grand secrets of nature can be called loss. To set men upon researches which might lead them to the absolute philosophy by the attraction of gold, such would appear to have been the end of the propaganda connected with the name of Lascaris. Reflection on Hermetic books would of necessity lead those who studied to a knowledge of the Kabbalah. As a fact, the initiates of the 18th century thought that their time had come, some for the foundation of a new hierarchy, others for the subversion of all authority, and for setting on the summits of the social order the level of equality. The secret societies sent their scouts through the world to sound opinion, and at need awaken it. After Saint Germain and Lascaris came Mesmer, and Mesmer was succeeded by Cagliostro. But they were not all of the same school. Saint-Germain was the ambassador of illuminated theosophists, while Lascaris represented the naturalists attached to the tradition of Hermes. Cagliostro was the agent of the Templars, and this is how he came to announce, in a circular address to all Masons in London, that the time had come to build the Temple of the Eternal. Like the Templars, Cagliostro was addicted to the practices of black magic and to the fatal science of evocations. He divined past and present, predicted things to come, wrought marvelous cures, and pretended to make gold. He introduced a new rite under the name of Egyptian masonry and sought to restore the mysterious worship of Isis. Wearing anemes like that of the Theban Sphinx, he presided in person over nocturnal assemblies, in chambers emblazoned with hieroglyphics and lighted by torches. His priestesses were young girls, whom he called doves, and he placed them in a condition of ecstasy by means of hydromancy in order to obtain oracles, water being an excellent conductor, a powerful reflector, and highly refracting medium for the astral light, as proved by sea and cloud mirages. It is obvious that Cagliostro was a successor of Mesmer and had the key of mediumistic phenomena. He was himself a medium, meaning that he was a man whose nervous organization was exceptionally impressionable, and to this he joined a fund of ingenuity and assurance, a public exaggeration, and the imagination especially of women supplying the rest. Cagliostro had an extravagant success. His bust was to be seen everywhere inscribed the divine Cagliostro. A reaction equivalent to the enthusiasm was of course to be foreseen. After having been a god, he became an intriguer and impostor, the debaucher of his wife, a scoundrel in fine, to whom the Roman Inquisition shewed grace by merely condemning him to perpetual imprisonment. The fact that his wife sold him lends color to the idea that previously he had sold his wife. He was taken in a snare. His prosecution followed, and his accusers published as much of the process as they pleased. The revolution came in the meantime, and everyone forgot Cagliostro. This adept is, however, by no means without importance in the history of magic. His seal is as significant as that of Solomon and attests his initiation into the highest secrets of science. As explained by the Kabbalistic letters of the names Akarat and Althotas, it expresses the chief characteristics of the great arcanum and the great work. It is a serpent pierced by an arrow, thus representing the letter Aleph, an image of the union between active and passive, spirit and life, will and light. The arrow is that of the antique Apollo, while the serpent is the python of fable, the green dragon of Hermetic philosophy. The letter Aleph represents equilibrated unity. This pantacle is reproduced under various forms in the talismans of old magic, but occasionally the serpent is replaced by the peacock of Juno, the peacock with the royal head and the tail of many colors. This is an emblem of analyzed light, that bird of the magnum opus, the plumage of which is all sparkling with gold. At other times, instead of the emblazoned peacock, there is a white lamb, the young solar ram bearing the cross, as still seen in the armorial bearings of the city of Rouen. The peacock, the ram, and the serpent have the same hieroglyphical meaning, that of the passive principle and the scepter of Juno. The cross and arrow signify the active principle, will, magical action, the coagulation of the dissolvent, the fixation of the volatile by projection, and the penetration of earth by fire. The union of the two is the universal balance, the great arcanum, the great work, the equilibrium of Germaine and Boaz. The initials LPD, which accompany this figure, signify liberty, power, duty, and also light, proportion, density, law, principle, and right. The Freemasons have changed the order of these initials, and in the form of LDP they render them as liberté de penser, liberty of thought, inscribing these on a symbolical bridge, but for those who are not initiated they substitute liberté de passer, liberty of passage. In the records of the prosecution of Cagliostro it is said that his examination elicited another meaning as follows: Lilia destru pedibus, trample the lilies underfoot, and in support of this version may be cited a Masonic medal of the 16th or 17th century, depicting a branch of lilies severed by a sword, having these words on the exurgu talem dabit ultio messum, revenge shall give this harvest. The name Akarat, assumed by Cagliostro, is written Kabbalistically thus: Aleph Shin Esh, Aleph Dale R, Aleph Tav Et, and expresses the triple unity Esh, the unity of principle and beginning R, the unity of life and perpetuity of regenerating movement, and At, the unity of end in an absolute synthesis. The name Althotas, or that of Cagliostro's master, is composed of the word Dot, with the syllables Al and Az, which, if read Kabbalistically, are Sala, meaning messenger or envoy. The name as a whole therefore signifies Thought, the messenger of the Egyptians, and such in effect was he whom Cagliostro recognized as his master above all others. Another title adopted by Cagliostro was that of the Grand Comte, and his doctrine had the twofold object of moral and physical regeneration. The precepts of moral regeneration, according to the Grand Coft, were as follows: you shall go up Mount Sinai with Moses, you shall ascend Calvary with Phaleg, you shall climb Thabor, and shall stand on Carmel with Elias. You shall build your tabernacle on the summit of the mountain. It shall consist of 3 wings or divisions, but these shall be joined together, and that in the center shall have 3 stories. The refectory shall be on the ground floor. Above it there shall be a circular chamber with 12 beds round the walls, and 1 bed in the center. This shall be the place of sleep and dreams. The uppermost room shall be square, having 4 windows in each of the 4 quarters, and this shall be the room of light. There and alone you shall pray for 40 days and sleep for 40 nights in the dormitory of the 12 masters. Then shall you receive the signatures of the 7 genii and the pentagram traced on a sheet of virgin parchment. It is the sign which no man knoweth, save he who receiveth it. It is the secret character inscribed on the white stone mentioned in the prophecy of the youngest of the 12 masters. Your spirit shall be illuminated by divine fire, and your body shall become as pure as that of a child. Your penetration shall be without limits, and great shall be also your power. You shall enter into that perfect repose which is the beginning of immortality. It shall be possible for you to say truly and apart from all pride, I am he who is. This enigma signifies that in order to attain moral regeneration, the transcendent Kabbalah must be studied, understood, and realized. The 3 chambers are the alliance of physical life, religious aspirations, and philosophical light. The 12 masters are the great revealers, whose symbols must be understood. The signatures of the 7 spirits mean the knowledge of the great arcanum. The whole is therefore allegorical, and it is no more a question of building a house of 3 stories than a temple at Jerusalem in masonry. Let us now turn to the secret of physical regeneration, to attain which, according to the occult prescription of the Grand Coft, a retreat of 40 days, after the manner of a jubilee, must be made once in every 50 years, beginning during the full moon of May, in the company of 1 faithful person only. It must be also a fast of 40 days, drinking may dew collected from sprouting corn with a cloth of pure white linen, and eating new and tender herbs. The repast should begin with a large glass of dew and end with a biscuit or crust of bread. There should be slight bleeding on the 17th day. Balm of Azoth should then be taken morning and evening, beginning with a dose of 6 drops and increasing by 2 drops daily till the end of the 32nd day. At the dawn which follows thereafter, renew the slight bleeding, then take to your bed and remain in it till the end of the 40th day. On the first awakening after the bleeding, take the first grain of universal medicine. A swoon of 3 hours will be followed by convulsions, sweats, and much purging, necessitating a change both of bed and linen. At this stage a broth of lean beef must be taken, seasoned with rice, sage, valerian, vervain, and balm. On the day following, take the 2nd grain of universal medicine, which is astral mercury combined with sulfur of gold. On the next day, have a warm bath. On the 36th day, drink a glass of Egyptian wine, and on the 37th, take the 3rd and last grain of universal medicine. A profound sleep will follow, during which the hair, teeth, nails, and skin will be renewed. The prescription for the 38th day is another warm bath, steeping aromatic herbs in the water, of the same kind as those specified for the broth. On the 39th day, drink 10 drops of elixir of Ekarat and 2 spoonsful of red wine. The work will be finished on the 40th day, and the aged man will be renewed in youth. By means of this jubilary regimen, Cagliostro claimed to have lived for many centuries. It will be seen that it is a variation of the famous bath of immortality in use among the Menandrian Gnostics. The question is whether Cagliostro believed in it seriously. However this may be, before his judges he shewed much firmness and presence of mind, professing that he was a Catholic who honored the Pope as supreme chief of the religious hierarchy. On matters relating to the occult sciences he replied enigmatically, and when accused of being absurd and incomprehensible he told his examiners that they had no ground of judgment, at which they were offended, and ordered him to enumerate the 7 deadly sins. Having recited lust, avarice, envy, gluttony, and sloth, they reminded him that he had omitted pride and anger. To this the accused retorted, "Pardon me, I had not forgotten them, but I did not include them out of respect for yourselves and for fear of offending you further." He was condemned to death, which was afterwards commuted to perpetual imprisonment. In his dungeon Cagliostro asked to make his confession and himself designated the priest, who was a man of his own figure and stature. The confessor visited him and was seen to take his departure at the end of a certain time. Some hours after, the gaoler entered the cell and found the body of a strangled man clothed in the garments of Cagliostro, but the priest himself was never seen again. Lovers of the marvelous declare that the Grand Coft is at this day in America, being the supreme and invisible pontiff of the believers in spirit rapping. Chapter footnotes. 1. The reference is probably to a French work, which in the absence of date and fuller description cannot be identified with certainty. 2. The writer in question certifies A. that the Comte de Gabalis was a German, B. that he was a great nobleman and a great Kabbalist, C. that his lands were on the frontiers of Poland, D. that he was a man of good presence who spoke French with a foreign accent. Saint-Germain testified on his own part to Prince Karl of Hesse that he was the son of Prince Ragozzi of Transylvania. Perhaps the latter place will be regarded as sufficiently in proximity to Poland to make the story of Eliphas Levi a little less unlikely than it appears on the surface. But the prince in question was Franz Leopold Ragozzi, who spent his life in conspiracies against the Austrian Empire, with the object of regaining his independent power and the freedom of his principality. No more unlikely person can be thought of as the original of the ridiculous Comte de Gabalis, and the Comte de Saint-Germain never intimated that he belonged to a line of Kabbalists, least of all such a Kabbalist and occultist as is depicted by the Abbé de Villers. See Mrs. Cooper Oakley's monograph on the Comte de Saint-Germain, Milan, 1912. 3. See Madame la Comtesse de Genlis Memoires inédites pour servir à l'histoire des dix huitièmes et dix neuvième siècles. 4. See the essay sur la secte des Illuminés, which appeared anonymously in 1789, the author being the Marquis de Luchet. The story here reproduced is given in Note 15 to the essay in question. It affirms that the Order of Initiated Knights and Brethren of Asia became the Order of St. Joachim about 1786. There is no mention of St. Germain in this note. 5. Eliphas Levi explains in a note that the neophyte whose experience is related, and who was mistaken for a corpse, was in a state of somnambulism induced by magnetism. In respect of the Green Arbor, and the effects produced by the harmonica, he refers to Deleuze' Histoire critique du magnétisme animal, 2nd edition, 1829. It contains curious accounts of the magnetic chain and trough, magnetized trees, music, the voice of the mesmerist, and the instruments employed by him. Levi adds that the author was a partisan of mesmerism, which does not leave his opinions open to suspicion. I do not know what this is intended to convey, but the work of Deleuze was of authority in its own day and is still worth reading. 6. It will be observed that Eliphas Levi is taking the story more seriously than he proposed to do at the beginning. If therefore I may on my own part take the Marquis de Luchet for a moment in the same manner and assume that he was right in saying that the Order of St. Joachim was a transformation of the Knights and Brethren of Asia, it seems certain that the latter did not owe their origin to St. Germain and that their connection with Rosicrucianism was of the Masonic kind only, members of the 5th degree being called true brothers Rose Croix, otherwise masters of the sages, royal priests, and brothers of the grade of Melchizedek. 7. Compare the ribaldries of the Marquis de Luchet respecting the harmonica and his supplementary account of its use in the evocations of Lavater. 8. Jachin is connected in Kabbalism with the Sephira Netzach because it is the right-hand pillar, and on account of Netzach, Jachin is in correspondence with Tzivaut Adonai, and Tevaut, the divine name Tetragrammaton, cannot be said, on Kabbalistical authority, to be veiled in Netzach. It was really veiled in Adonai because of Shekinah, and the cohabiting glory between the cherubim was the manifestation, vestment, and concealment of Jehovah. 9. There is no secret as to the authorship of the tract on Illuminism, and Levi could have been enlightened on the subject by his friend J. M. Regan. So far from being imbecile, the monograph of the Marquis de Luchet is entertaining if it is not brilliant. As to the transmutations of St. Germain, it is meant that there is no evidence of gold being produced by his methods, but it is otherwise in respect of precious stones. For the exoneration of de Luchet, it does not signify that the evidence is bad. 10. See L'Alchimie Les Alchimistes, by Louis Figuier, pages 320 and following. I have intimated that it is very difficult to trust this writer in matters of historical fact, but he represents Lascaris as appearing in Germany at the end of the 17th century, being then about 50 years old, and in any case it is a mistake to say that he was in evidence when the Comte de Saint-Germain was making a sensation in Paris. Lascaris had long since vanished from the theater of Hermetic events. 11. It was in the presence of the rack that the testimony of his wife was extracted, and I suppose that there is no one at this day who will count it as infidelity on her part. 12. This device is inscribed on the symbolic bridge which is mentioned in the grade of Knight of the East, or of the Sword. 13. According to the account of himself which Cagliostro gave at the famous trial arising out of the diamond necklace affair, Acharat was the name which he bore in the years of childhood which he spent at Medina. His governor was Althotas, who has been sometimes identified with Kolmer, the instructor of Weishaupt in magic. 14. In his Lexicon Alchemiae 1612, Martinus Rulandus explains that, according to the system of Paracelsus, Azoth was the universal medicine, though for others it is one of the names ascribed to the philosophical stone. It was evidently neither in the process of Cagliostro, but if questioned he might have identified it with philosophical mercury, a substance which can be extracted from any metallic body. 15. It is interesting to note that Mr. W.R.H. Trowbridge, who has made the latest attempt to exonerate Cagliostro, has omitted all reference to the regeneration processes and the alleged attempt to renew thereby the youth of Cardinal de Rohan. 16. As seen already, Menander was the successor of Simon Magus, and the baptism which he performed was claimed to confer immortality. 17. This story has been altered from the original narrative to make it appear that Cagliostro escaped. He did nothing of the sort, for the monk proved the stronger of the two. Prince Bernard of Saxe-Weimar is the authority for the account, and he is said to have guaranteed its accuracy.
Thanks for watching the Wisdom Rocker. Don't forget to like, comment, and share.